All right, day 29 for RPG A Day 2023. The question is, what is the most memorable encounter that I've played in or been a part of? And I've done a lot of games. So there's been a lot of different ones that I've run and played in, a lot of different challenging scenarios and fun scenarios and all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to just choose one. I looked through our YouTube actually to look at all the different games that I've played or run and just been in. And I'm just going to choose one to talk about. And let's go into story time. So in the world of in the world of Erden, which is where the Dungeon Delvers Guild was set, this homebrew world, there was a kingdom called Neria. And Neria was headed by a queen, and she had a duke who was kind of her acting hand, as her steward, because she was very sick, is what the population knew her as. She was widowed and had kind of retired off into her palace and estates out in the countryside, not really being that much part of the governing for the country, because she was always ill. And what was really going on was she was cursed, and she was having a lot of trouble with her curse, because every time she slept, she would have nightmares, and these nightmares manifested and spawned dungeons all over Neria, and they were all kinds of stuff. It was kind of just, as a DM, it was a very easy reason to make just wacky dungeons, which at that point in the Dungeon Delvers Guild, we were running one. This was like during the pandemic, like early 2020 and late 2020. We're all quarantining. Didn't really have anything going on, and we were gaming. Gosh, there were probably like 12 games a week in our game calendar. I think they're at the record. There were 3 games going all at the same time, like 5 or 6 players in each game. We were running a ton of games, and so the way we did that was kind of through what's it called, the West Marches style, where every DM would just run like a one-shot storyline, and it was just not really a campaign, but everybody had characters, and they would just play whenever they had the chance, and there were all the different DMs posting games. And so these Nerian dungeons were a great way to allow people to just throw something together as a DM, throw some encounters, and have the players go from the Dungeon Delvers Guild to Neria, and then from there go into this dungeon, and they had to go close the dungeon or stop whatever was happening. So this one specific encounter, the Queen of Neria, I guess this is all spoilers. I never actually ran a game where this came up, but this is the background for that, for those who have played in those games. So the queen had this nightmare where her younger self was trapped in something, and this other version of herself from being spawned in this dungeon wanted to escape out of this subplane, this pocket dimension. And so there was an opening, this fissure into Neria, and the party had to go in and find out what the dungeon anchor was, and take that anchor, remove the anchor, which would close the dungeon, and get out of the plane before the pocket dimension shriveled and it was removed from existence. And that was the theme with a lot of these dungeons. That was actually something that I was inspired by some random manga that my wife Rebecca read, and that was just a really cool idea. It might have been an anime. It might have been the Sinbad anime, where dungeons spawn and you have to go get the anchor and remove it. So that was from some sort of anime or manga concept, but that was what these characters had to do. They had to go into the dungeon. They encountered the queen's ghost, Queen Yvonne of Neria, this younger version of herself who wanted to get out of the dungeon. And as they were closing the dungeon, one of the players, he was playing a Warforged, and he was a bard, and he was, this is in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and they were mid to high level. They might have been level 7 to 10, somewhere in there. And before they left, through however it happened, the queen's ghost was able to possess Mady, the Warforged bard. And as they were all leaving the dungeon, because now Mady has the queen's spirit in his motherboard. It was so funny how he was playing this. Mady was an awesome character. But they wound up closing the dungeon and getting out, but this allowed the queen's spirit, this clone of the Queen of Neria, to be kind of imbued into Mady. So that's all the history. This is the one shot that we ran, and then, you know, however many weeks later, when the time comes I want to run another dungeon, the most memorable encounter, one of these nightmares that the queen has, there's a demon that wants to kill her and wipe out her city. This is a nightmare that the queen is having. And because now there's the queen in Neria in her country estate, and now there's a queen, a copy of her, in Mady, in his Warforged computer system, and they're completely different areas of the country in Erdin, this world. So Mady is in the Dungeon Delvers Guild, just playing on his arm violin, and all of a sudden he gets a kind of a vision from the queen that's possessed inside of him, and he sees this demon like swearing to he's going to end her in her city or whatever, and he just starts like having fireballs launched down to destroy the city. And it manifests, this dungeon, this Nerian dungeon spawns above the city where the Dungeon Delvers Guild is, and it's like it manifests as almost like a moon or something that's up in the sky. So it's nighttime, and there's the moon, and then there's this pocket dimension which appears like a moon, and then just all these meteors start raining down from this dungeon through this open fissure in the sky, and they have to keep all these meteors are going to come and destroy the city. So the party, which is, I think at this point they're all like 10th or 11th level, they're pretty high level characters, they all go out, they create a shield around the city, and I think the Dungeon Delvers Guild's like I forgot what they call him Tokarov. He's the guild master. He makes this giant shield over the city which deflects all the meteors and uses all his energy, and then he goes into like a magical coma because he uses so much of his magical energy. And then the party realize that these meteors are raining down towards Mady. So he immediately they cast the fly spell on him, and he turns into Inspector Mady, and he's got a helicopter blade on his head, and he goes flying up into the air. It was so funny how Mady played that character. But they get out of the city, and all the fireballs, these meteorites, just keep like tracking after him because it's trying to incinerate the queen in his motherboard. And so they get out of the city, lead all the fireballs, and there's enough delay to where they're not getting hit. They can dodge the meteors without having to do too much, as long as they maintain like high speeds and stuff. But they realize that they have to get up to this pocket dimension, this moon that's up in the sky where the meteors are coming, and fight the demon. And so they make a plan to try to look around the area and just keep finding the place that they can get basically nuked without too much repercussions, because all these meteors are crashing down. So they keep going in a circle until they make a plan to kind of find out where the dungeon anchor is. One of their party members has been inside a Nerian dungeon, so he knows there's an entrance somewhere, and once you get into the dungeon, you have to find the anchor and remove it. And the anchor was typically a magical item with some sort of tie-in to the queen's past, whether it was her journal, a sword, or a crown, something. Mady's spirit that possessed him was her crown in that other dungeon. But they start looking around the area, and they find Mady and his story, his background, where there's a pirate ship called the Ailstorm. And completely away from any of the coasts or whatever, they see the Ailstorm kind of buried up into one of the hills. And this is where the queens being merged into Mady has connected them. And so now they're part of the dungeon, is part of Mady's background. And that was a really fun element to this encounter, which I know this is a very long story. This is like 10, 12 minutes. Probably keep going for a little bit longer. But the players realized at this point that something to do with Mady being, possessed by this queen spirit connected him very personally to the Anarian dungeons. And that was a really big aha moment. And the fact that there were like, I forgot what the level of that spell in D&D is. It's like Meteor Storm or something. It's a very high level, very dangerous spell. And it's like every round it's being cast at them. So if they don't dodge these fireballs, they're in big trouble. So they were all really nervous about it. But they go in, and the Ailstorm has some skeletons and stuff, kind of easy to dodge maneuvers, but they're all targeting Mady. And so they're having to now protect their bard, and they go in and they clean it out of the minions, and they find out that there's a portal. This is the dungeon entrance. So they go through, it transports them up into the plane up in the sky, and it's like, I forget exactly. It's been a long time since I've run this game. But it was like the moon, but like it was a wasteland, and there were all these almost like catapults shooting these fireballs out, and they have to kind of go through, still avoid them, because now it's very close range for these meteor spells, and there's so many of them launching at the same time is really dangerous. But they eventually do catch up to the demon, and they kill it, they fight it, and I don't know, I don't want to make the story anticlimactic, but that's kind of, that encounter in that one shot was really, really fun to run. And a big part of that was because it tied in all of this stuff that I had been building from the DM's perspective of this queen and her curse and all these dungeons, but tying that directly into the players and having them react, realizing how much of the story they have now become tied into. And it was just really fun. So the most memorable encounter, I would say, was, the storyline of the Narian dungeons was fun to do, but this one specifically I will highlight as a very memorable encounter because Mady he had the queen inside of him, and that ghost spirit tied into his Warforged motherboard. And it was just a great group of people. There was Tabby in there, Naru, Sajeda, Ragoth, and Mady. It was 5 players all were in that game. It was like the OG crew from the very beginning of the Dungeon Delvers Guild. And so it was really fun to run them through that and see their reactions and just watch them go through the game. So anyways, 13 minutes through. I hope you all have a great RPG day. It's actually the 31st, so I need to catch up on 2 more videos. And I've been so busy at work, I have not had a time to record any of these, especially since I wanted to tell this story. And I knew it would take like 15 minutes. So anyways, I will see you all in a couple minutes because I will finish up. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day too. Happy gaming.